Good afternoon and welcome to OmniBros Live. I'm one of your co-hosts, OmniDog from OmniDog's Vault, here on a Sunday to welcome you with my co-host, Gabe Areno. How's it going, Gabe?
I'm doing great, Jess. Good to see you. I'm glad you survived your late night chat with Omar, with a apparently very intoxicated near mint condition Omar. So that's awesome. I was saying earlier in the green room before we started, I didn't know that was going on, or else I would have just caught up to Omar and jumped in, and would have made it something exciting. So
I didn't know it was happening either. He starts to Tyler and he and I are in a chat that originally started out about Transformers, and it's gone off to all topics. And then he texted us at 11:30 last night. I'm already in bed, like I had bedhead already. I was half asleep. And he texted us and said, "Let's do a show. I'm drunk." And I'm like, "No, what? This isn't a good idea." So we argued about it for like 10 minutes. And then I said, "Okay, this sounds like a good idea." So none of us wanted to do it on anybody's channel. So because we knew a drunk Omar was, first of all, Omar wouldn't do it on his channel. So I said, well, let's do it on OmniBros, and then I'll throw the link in there and see if they want to join us. And I think we went live about 10 to midnight. And I specifically said it was unsponsored because I didn't want IST to get upset. Well, I had no idea it was going to come from his mouth. And near minting became a verb. He said somewhere in there when he was drunk something like, "Have you near minted today?" or something. And I said, "Did you just say that?" And so near minting became like, what is that, an adjective or a verb or a noun? I don't know. It became a word. And so everybody was near minting last night. And
was it just you and Omar, or did Tyler pop in? Or
yeah, Tyler came in about 10 minutes later.
I really want to hang out with Tyler. Damn it.
It was funny because Omar was way sloshed at the very beginning, and he was finishing up. He poured himself a new cranberry and bourbon, and finished that. Dude. So he was fully tweaked for at least an hour and a half. He started to sober up. And he and I started to get tired. It was like 1:45 my time. So we ended at like 2 a.m. We were on for 2 hours. I think he was in the chat this morning. I don't know that he gets that hungover.
He's a champ. He knows. He probably has his own like hangover cure where he just pounds a bunch of like Gatorade and eats Chipotle or something.
Oh, I do have Carly. I do have Melanie's phone number. I should have texted her to see if she was alive, because that was a big topic. Omar kept flipping on his words and intimated she was upstairs but not breathing or something. It was so funny. We were just beating on each other. It was so funny.
Awesome. Very cool.
I'm pretty sure she's still alive. Yeah. Pretty sure.
If not, Omar's busy digging, making a hole somewhere. That's what he's doing.
Well, last night's show couldn't be sponsored, but this one is by InStockTrades.com, where you can get all your collected editions up to 50% off. Loyalty discounts add 2% to that. At the end of every month, we give away a $50 gift card to InStockTrades.com, courtesy of IST, to a lucky viewer like you. $50 or more in an order gets you free shipping in the U.S. Fabulous customer service, fabulous packaging. That's InStockTrades.com. That was another thing. Tyler Blunt kept singing the jingle, and I was like, cut it out. Don't even mention IST.
Don't want anybody thinking that episode is sponsored.
Right. I didn't want
Cameron
watching it and thinking, are we sponsoring these guys? So everything came up. Everything that I ever did wrong in the show came up, like effing Nemo and Emily's mom, breaking a tooth, and a bunch of things. It was funny.
Very cool. Dang, I missed out on that. I'm gonna have to go back around and watch that because that sounds like a once in a lifetime experience.
If we can, it was his idea. So next time he's drunk and he texts me, I'll try and call you up then.
Yeah, let me know. I'm gonna join in on the fun. Crank it up a little bit. Speaking of cranking it up a little bit, what do we got on for? What's our plan for today, Jess?
Today we are interviewing the best-selling writer of the new comic book called Home. Home #1 just came out from Image. It's sold out. Its first printing. It's already on its second printing. His name is Julio Anta. Yeah, trichinosis. I am up. My dog woke me up at 7:30 this morning. Julio is the writer of Home #1, which I said is a hot book. It's already sold out and is on its second reprinting. And it deals with a very controversial topic, which we will let him talk about. Is he in the chat?
He's here. He's in the back room.
Is he in the green room?
He's in the green room, enjoying all of our green room amenities that we have for our guests.
I'm still sweating from my shower. Sorry. It's the hot, bright lights of the studio.
Yeah. All right. So let's go ahead. We're going to bring on our special guest, Julio. So let's see what's going on with him today. Welcome, Julio. Welcome to the show.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on with us.
No, of course. I'm a big fan. Been part of the Facebook group for quite some time, a few years now. So, I've seen you guys around, spoken a few times. So I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, well, we're excited to have you. I think it's funny, you and I have been texting or PMing for a while, rather, on Facebook, and you sent me the PDF, and I read it, and I thought my thoughts, but then this Facebook group I'm a part of for picking hot books had Home #1 covers A and B up as a pick. And I thought, oh, okay, they picked it. I better get it. And it went to second printing. And then I looked at your book and I'm like, oh, this is Julio's book. Holy smoke, I'm lucky I got a copy. It's already on second printing.
That's awesome. That is such a hot book that you ran through the first print already. How large was the first print run?
So I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about this, but it was 18,000 copies. That was the first printing of the issue. And the way that Image works is that they obviously all publishers do FOC, and then they print a couple of thousand above the FOC. Mm-hmm. And then we found out a few hours into Wednesday that they sold out at the distributor on the day it was released. So we're really excited.
Awesome. Let's do this. Give us a quick kind of synopsis of Home and that series and your experience with it. We have a kind of a video commercial that Image put up for Home #1. So if you can, give us a quick synopsis of that, and We'll introduce it after that, and we'll show the video as well to give people an idea of what we're talking about today.
Yeah, sure. So Home, it's from Image. It's a 5-issue miniseries, and essentially it is a story about a boy named Juan and his mother Mercedes, who come to the U.S. from Guatemala to seek asylum. And when they arrive, it happens to be around the time that family separation began at the border. While they were on their journey, they had no idea that was happening. So it was a big surprise to them when they arrived. And when they're inevitably separated, the stress, trauma, anxiety that Juan, the boy, feels ignites these latent superhuman abilities that have been inside of him. And that's pretty much that's the solicitation for the book, and we kind of jump off from there.
Awesome. So let's take a look at this video. It's a beautiful video that shows some of the beautiful art. So we'll take a moment to take a look at that real quick. the music for that really fits the.
Yeah, what is that music?
I have no idea, to be honest.
I want to Shazam it because I want to own it.
Yeah, go to their YouTube channel. It's there. But yeah, they put this together, sent
Okay.
it to me for approval, and I thought it was perfect. It was a great song choice.
It's beautiful. I mean, it's just the music and the images are really moving, because when you get into the book, it's a very raw story, and you can't. It's not up for dispute that these things happen, because those were the official positions of the Trump administration. I mean, it's a fact that these things happened, and were happening for I don't know how many years or months, but and it shows the conditions. I was not aware of the conditions that this happened in, and I think it shows in a very real human terms the horror of a mother or father or both getting separated from their child, that they just, journeyed from, as you said, Guatemala, but it could be anywhere, and trying to enter the country legally. They're not climbing over a fence or anything, or digging under the ground and having somebody lead them through. They're coming through the entry point because they have a job lined up and want to get him into school, and they're leaving because of gang terrorism, or gang members who are targeting her son. It's not a book that can be. You can't argue that this is an biased point of view, because this is how the Trump administration, and I'm just saying this flatly, this is how the Trump administration wanted it to be. They put in these rules and had these things as official policy. And you paint it, you fill in the gaps with in more human terms as to what the conditions are like, and what the emotions are felt, what the people are like that the immigrants first face and have to deal with. It's a really brutal look at what our country was doing. I don't even know what's going on now, but it's a brutal look at what our country was doing at that time. And I know that you said on the back of the book that there is some hope, and I think that's what I'd like to talk about, because I'd like to know what the hope is, because it's a raw but important read for people to look at. I think it's an important book.
Thank you. Yeah.
So what's the hope that you were talking about?
Let me address one of the things that you said before, and then we'll talk about the hope aspect of it. But you mentioned that the way that this book is presented, it states the facts, right? Facts that cannot be disputed. The Trump administration used family separation as a form of deterrence. The cruelty was the point of what they were doing. They were trying to send a message to the rest of South America, the Caribbean, Mexico, and most people don't know there's immigrants coming in from the entire world at the Mexican border. A lot of African immigrants and Asian immigrants travel to Mexico to then seek asylum, but essentially they were trying to send a message to the entire world that if you try to come here and seek asylum, this is what is going to happen to you. So to your point, I wouldn't say, some people would, but I wouldn't say that there's bias in this book, because we're presenting the facts as plainly as the Trump administration presented it. And then what we're doing is, this book is not about politics. This book is about the way that these politics affect a family and all of those around them in these detention centers. So for the hope part of it, I think by the end of the book is where I've heard from a lot of readers where they start to feel that hope, because you see what these abilities are that this young boy has. And I would say the rest of the book is a book about survival. How do you survive as a young boy alone in a strange place? How do you, and this is where we get into more, typical comic book superhero tropes, but how do you learn to deal with these superhuman abilities? And that's where the hope comes in, from at least from my vantage point of writing it. Some people might read it and feel like it's completely bleak by the end of the 5 issues. But for me, I do think that there is some hope by the end of it, because this boy does have the ability to potentially do something about it. And the debate and the conversation that takes place throughout the rest of the series is, what do you do now? And it's a similar debate to what we see in X-Men books. Do we fight back? Do we hide? Do we run? There's all of these very logical ways to go about it. And that's the conversation that's being had throughout this book.
Yeah, it's a great. It's like Jess is saying, and all the devils are in the details for this book. Like everything that's in this book is something that is it's a very heavy subject. Reading this book, for anybody who has kids, anybody that might be related or came through as an immigrant themselves, or whose family had brought them over, or whatever the case might be, it's a very heavy subject, but you get some of that superhero element to it where Julio develops powers, but at the same time, it's still very grounded. Like, I don't know what happens in the upcoming issues, but I don't see Julio getting like superpowers, or I'm sorry, getting like a superhero costume and getting,
no.
It's still very grounded in the baseline and the foundation of these horrific moments that are happening at the border.
How old is Juan?
He's 10 years old. We don't,
okay.
It's never explicitly said in the book, but
Right.
I was writing him as about a 10-year-old. But yeah, Gabe, to your point, it's not, a lot of people, it's very easy to call this a superhero book. A lot of the headlines are like immigrant superhero. I wouldn't consider it that personally, because to your point, he's not going to don a costume. He's not going to become, a typical big 2 kind of superhero. For me, the heroics are what he and his family go through and are able to survive, and how they deal with these things, with their situation, and then coupled on top of that, these superhuman abilities.
Right. It's a justification of the idea that he's helpless at this point. Like there's nothing scarier for a child than the idea of losing your parents or being separated from your parents. And you see that happen.
Being in a strange place.
Being in a strange place, not knowing the language, I mean, luckily this is it has a little bit more of a happier setting where he's with these other kids and they seem to be fairly friendly. But it could also be the situation where he's in there with a bunch of bullies or a bunch of just like, the really bad kind of kids. But you get that sense that there is that hope, and that there is the subject of, him getting superpowers. And again, it's not like he's going to go join the Avengers or anything like that. And he's in this helpless situation. And children like that, I'm sure in the helpless situation, they just wish that they had the superhero powers and the abilities to do something about it. And he kind of gets that at the end, and you kind of see what happens, and it kind of furthers the story. So you do get to see him get kind of that empowerment as well. And it's really interesting to see what's going to happen next. It's great.
Well, yeah. And I think that's the sign of a good story, when it ends like that and you say, I want to know how this goes. I want to keep reading this. I want to see where this goes. Some stories, you read the first issue and it says continued, and you're like, you can continue without me. I'm not. But this one's like, okay, you got me. Where are we going here now? What's going to happen to this kid? What about the mom? What about the policies? Does anything happen? This is compelling.
Thank you. Yeah, a lot of it, it's Gabe, you were talking about, what the situation must be like for these kids in these, detention centers. And, I think a part of it that a lot of people maybe don't remember or maybe didn't even know when this situation was happening is that these children weren't just separated from their parents and then put in another detention center the way that it is in the book. The next step would be the kids being shipped off around the country to foster homes. So a lot of the research that I did for this book was listening to interviews with these parents that had no idea where their kids were. One of the ones that struck me in particular was a mother who she presented herself just like Juan and Mercedes did in Texas. They were separated. The son was sent to a detention center, and then he was shipped and ended up in the Bronx in New York at a foster home. And she had no idea for weeks and weeks where he even was. She knew that he wasn't at the detention center that they took him, but she had no idea where they sent him. Nobody would tell her. For me, my background is that I'm part Cuban on one side of my family, Colombian on the other side of my family. And my father came to this country as a 3-year-old in the 60s as a Cuban refugee. So when all of this was unfolding, I was seeing my father in the eyes of these kids. And as a new father myself at the time, I was seeing my son in the eyes of these kids. And the idea of, doing anything that I could to give my child a better life, even if that meant leaving our home. And then for this place that's supposed to be a safe haven for us to then treat us that cruelly and not even, give me a chance to just say, you know what, forget it. I'm just going to go back. But once you were in, and your child was just sent away. So it was, for me, a super, heartbreaking thing to witness, and then really difficult to write as well.
When you researched this and you talked about the mom having the child sent to the Bronx, where was she at the time the interview took place? Was she still in a detention center or back at her home or in the US?
She was in Mexico. She was essentially expelled back on the other side of the border. Okay. And she was working with a nonprofit in the US. I don't remember the group, but they were a nonprofit that very quickly, raised money and started pulling their resources together to try to track down where these kids were being sent and find them. And I remember when the news broke, I'm in New York, here in New York, that there were like 30 of these kids at a foster home in the Bronx. And thanks to the good work of a lot of these nonprofits and humanitarian groups, she was able to find her son.
Oh, that's wonderful news. I mean, it's a good thing that there is some of that's out there, but unfortunately, we know that there's still a lot of displaced children and families going on as well. So, how did this kind of come up? What made you decide to do this story, let alone do it in the form of a comic book and through image? Like, I kind of want to know the kind of timeline and the thought process that this took place.
Sure. Yeah. So this is a book that has, I actually posted about this on Twitter today because somebody was, saying thank you to Image for putting this book out. And I went to a lot of publishers with this book and was denied in one form or another at every place other than Image. Some of it said they thought that it was important work, but too political. Others, very nicely said no, and some didn't respond at all. But to take it all the way back, spring 2018 is when family separation starts. I am not a comic book writer or, working in comics at all at the time. I'm seeing this happen, and I'm just like broken by it completely. Me as a person, and I think probably a lot of you listening and you guys as well, who are, into collected editions and comics, I have a very obsessive personality. When I started collecting Omnis, I just started buying everything. When I, got into records, I started just buying every record that I loved. And then
one of us.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. But the negative aspect of that also is that same inclination also moves into, when I become obsessed with something that's negative, So that's how it was with this issue of Family Separation. When the news broke and we found out that this had been going on for a couple of weeks, and now we found out that it was actually happening for months before that already. But when that news broke, I kind of dived in head first into all of it, not knowing that I was going to write about it at all, just as, you know, a Latino, as a father, and as an American who was just seeing this and horrified. I was reading every article that I could find from local media outlets around the southern border. I was watching tons of videos on YouTube, listening to interviews. In hindsight, I think it was a way of me trying to cope with how I was feeling, diving into it in this obsessive way. Flash forward to, I think, maybe the fall of that year of 2018 is when I had the idea to write this book. Because I was seeing a lot of those parallels from a lot of the comics that I loved growing up, that do parallel the immigrant experience with the superhero origin story. You know, we obviously see it with Superman, we see it with the X-Men. I think there's a really long tradition of seeing that within comics. So fall of 2018, I am still not involved in comics at all, but I have this idea, and I think, like a lot of people, you know, like comics, like, you know, I could probably write that too, you know. So I kind of try to start doing that, and I start doing research on, you know, reading scripts and how it is that comics are made. And in November is actually when I reach out to Anna WIESZCZYK, the artist that I worked with on this book. And I essentially reach out to her with the idea, and she's very into it. And we start working on character mock-ups, character designs. And then essentially, I guess from November 2018 through October 2019, which is October 2019 is when I start pitching the book at New York Comic Con, where I'm learning as much as I can about writing comics, reading about how you pitch comics to different publishers, and working on the pitch for this book. And along the way, I also start working on short stories, like mini comics, with different artists that are 4 to 10 pages. I'd gotten the really good advice from Ed Brisson that the best thing you can do when you start off as a comic book writer is to work on short stories before you start, you know, writing your 100-issue opus or whatever, just so that you can grow as a writer, learn what it's like to collaborate with other artists, and then also have something that you can show publishers when you're pitching them, even if you're pitching your first book, like I was with Home, that you've done this before, even if it's just on a really small scale, and that you can, you know, deliver on writing a book. So that's what I did. I put out a few mini comics during that time, and I put them out for free on Twitter and on my website. And then at New York Comic Con in October, I essentially just started cold pitching publishers at their booths, and having conversations with them. And, you know, that's not something that I'd probably do now if I was pitching a book. But it actually opened up a door that led to Image, essentially. I went to their booth and I pitched one of their imprints on the book. And the editor was really nice. She didn't think it was the exact right fit for the imprint that she's an editor at, but she thought it was something that Image Central would be interested in. And she put it in front of them because she was really taken by the book. And then it took a little while. It took a few months. I think it was March 2020 when they officially greenlit the book. And it was supposed to launch in November, but the pandemic kind of pushed their entire slate back. But yeah, that's essentially how it happened.
That's great. Wow. Because I know you did a short story in the COVID Chronicles too, that recently came out. So that's really cool how it just, you know, you start small and you kind of build your way up, you know, to doing something like this. So how's the reaction been to such a heavy story? What kind of reaction and feedback have you been getting? Other than it's selling out, so obviously it's selling out, the positive thing, but I'm wondering, you know, what the fans think.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's 95% positive, very positive. I think so my intention with writing the book was to shine a light on what was happening, and also try to present it in a human way so that people that, maybe come into it with a different opinion on the subject, or maybe were really unaware of what was happening when it was happening, could hopefully connect with this kid, with Juan and his mother, and maybe see it from a different perspective. So that was my intention with the book. And my other intention was also to show positive and empathetic portrayals of Latino characters in comics, because I think it's a fact that in media, we're the most underrepresented group of all minority groups in the US, especially when it comes to how much media we consume. But I think it's even more dramatic in comics. Obviously, we have some Latino creators. We have some characters. We have Miles Morales. We have America Chavez. We have a few DC ones as well, but we really don't have much representation at all. And when we do, it's usually some cartoonish villain. So I came into writing this book with those two intentions in mind. So hearing the feedback that I have, which is I've had a lot of people message me on social media and email me about their family's immigration story, and how this is the first time they've seen something like that in comics, and how how angry it made them feel to read this book at certain points, and how sad it made them feel. I just finished watching a review of a woman from Guatemala who was crying while she was reviewing it, talking about the book and the parallels with her own story. And of course, there's the opposite reaction, that we can always expect from a certain contingent of the comics community, and how they're going to react to a book that has what some would consider political elements to it. For me, this is not something that should be political at all. There's politics involved in it, but it's you shouldn't land on either side of this issue.
What? Let me just interrupt for a second. What is the negative view based on when you're just presenting what the Trump administration's official policy is?
Yeah.
If there's a negative reaction to it, what is somebody that doesn't like the book basing their negative reaction on?
Yeah. It's a lot of giving the perspective that this happened because of criminals, smuggling children, and that, it wasn't as bad as the news makes it sound. That asylum is not a valid form of legal migration. It's a lot of that kind of argument. And also, the crowd that says, don't bring politics into comics, and that don't want to read anything like that in their comics. So, it's a lot of, it's that, but like I said, I think it's a very tiny minority.
Good.
Sometimes they're a loud minority, but I think it's from the reactions that I've seen, I think it's mostly been really positive.
I mean, it's part of history for the most part. Like these are like legitimate topics that happen, and these are legitimate events. This isn't something that you made up or that you're fantasizing or making theatrics out of. It's like these were legitimate things that happened, and luckily, this is a fake world that we're living in, and nothing too whatever happens, but you start to realize that these were real things that did happen, and there is no way to try and cut that as being like, oh, it wasn't that bad. There's nothing good about the idea of a child being ripped away from their parents. And it's great to, and I'm going to applaud you and Image and Anna for kind of taking that route and kind of sticking your necks out for something like this, because there was that chance of this being an even more like serious, controversial kind of topic and subject line.
Yeah, no, thank you. I read comics to escape also. I read books that are just for fun too. But when it comes to what I feel passionate enough about to want to spend all the time that it takes to make a comic, to promote a comic, like I explained, it was obviously a long road to this comic finally being published, this last week. But if I'm going to spend all this time and energy to make something, I want it to be something that, you know, that I think could move the needle forward, at least with the audience that's reading the comic, and particularly in this case, the direct market. I want to present something that, like I said, reflects the times and that can hopefully try to either let people be seen in a play in a medium that they're not seen, or maybe try to change the mind of people who, you know, don't already have this view that I have in this situation, that we all talking here today have.
Yeah, no, I get it. And like you said, you know, as a Hispanic individual myself, there is very little representation of someone who looks like me or comes from the same background I did. Unless, and when you do see it, like when I was a kid, I think the first like Hispanic character that I saw was Skin from Generation X. And he was a gross character, and of course he came from the hood, and he always talked about drive-bys and things like that. I've even said it on the show where watching like Young Justice, where you have, you know, Blue Beetle, you have Jaime Reyes, and every other word he said was homie and homes, and like, you know, we don't talk that way. Like that's like you said, that's a very cartoonish, stereotypical representation of who we are. And it's just, yeah, it would be great to see more superheroes or more just comics and stories in general coming from this same kind of mindset that you have of, this isn't political, this is current events. And the current events in politics, whatever you want to call it, has been with comic books from the jump start. I mean, Captain America stopped being Captain America because he had a problem with Reagan and his politics. So it's always been there, and it's always good to see that this kind of subject has come up in this way. Let's do this. Are you okay? Because we have a PDF of this book. Is it okay if we kind of scroll through it and you can kind of give us some commentary? Because I really want to showcase Anna's work. Like that video showed a little bit, but Anna's work is gorgeous in this.
Yeah,
book.
I wanted to ask you. You said you just you got in touch with her. Did you know her ahead of time, or how did you know to reach out to her?
No, you know, I kind of buried the lead on that one. It's actually a pretty interesting story. So at the time, obviously, like I said, I don't really know anything about how to find an artist or anything like that. I stumble upon a subreddit called Comic Book Collaborations, I think it is, where people can post, you know, like almost like a job listing of like, hey, I'm a writer. This is the kind of book I want to make. Are there any artists out there that want to collaborate with me on it? And I did that. And that was kind of my first introduction to what the reaction to this book might be, with, you know, trolls, you know, saying negative things about it. But Anna reached out to me. So we found each other on Reddit. She's one of the people that responded and said, hey, I'm interested in this. Like, maybe we should talk about it. And then I just DM'd her and we kind of went from there.
And where is she from?
She's from Poland.
From Poland, okay.
Yeah. She lives in Poland.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is she is this work is this digital? Does she do this traditional? Like what's her kind of format medium?
Yeah, I'm 99% sure it's totally digital. No, I mean, yeah, I can say it definitely is based off of the thumbnails that she sent me and the pencils. It's all digital work. But yeah, if we want to talk about this page, essentially the first 3 pages of the book are showing their journey from Guatemala to the Reynosa McAllen point of entry at the US-Mexico border. And kind of with the images of their journey, you're seeing essentially what I did is I took a Jeff Sessions speech and some other kind of right-wing talking points and put them together into a speech that would explain essentially where we are in time and what's happening, and that this is family separation, and using their words essentially to show where we are in this timeline of the world. And what's happening, and that they're about to encounter family separation.
And they're unaware of it right now on their journey.
Yeah, you know, the thing about family separation is that we all found out about it weeks after it had already happened. So, you know, people who showed up at the border to seek asylum, they had no idea that it was happening because nobody nobody publicly knew this at all.
Hmm.
And then when they, and even let's say let's say they were on their journey when the news broke, they're also likely not hearing about it until they arrive at the border.
Yeah, because you can see that through all the caption boxes you hear. It does a great job of just kind of catching everybody up to kind of what's going on, and you see the treacherous trek, where they're up here, where they're on top of a moving train with what appears to be hundreds, if not thousands of other people like them trying to seek asylum and refuge. And while all this is happening, it's literally overnight practically. The laws change, and now every time they get closer and closer, they were just getting more into containment camps and that kind of situation at the border.
Yeah, and like I said, this is very researched, and so the train is actually, it's known as La Bestia, the beast. And that's a real train that people get on top of at the border of Guatemala and Mexico, and that takes you pretty deep into Mexico. And that's a route that a lot of people take, and obviously it's dangerous. But for a lot of people, that's the only way to get, to make that part of the trip. And this is a month-long trip, generally a month-long trip that people take. So with these pages, I really wanted to show how, a lot of times in the political conversation of it, this gets lost, but that they're risking a lot. Not just in leaving everything behind, but also in the journey. A lot of people don't make it through this journey. A lot of people die, are abused in some way throughout the trip. So that's kind of what I wanted to show in these panels, that it's not just, a little bus ride to get to the border and then that's it,
Yeah, they didn't come over through like some kind of like coyote or any kind of like illegal means or anything like that as well.
And it's 30. You said it's a month long, and they're wearing the same clothes, and you don't show anything about food or going to the bathroom or any privacy. It's got to be incredibly challenging to. I mean, you can't even put that in the book, but I just think of how just incredibly uncomfortable that month-long journey had to be for anybody.
Let alone what I'm assuming is a young single mom with a 10-year-old boy.
Yeah. I mean, just wearing this. This is coming from the perspective of somebody that changes his shirt twice a day, and I'm talking about you're wearing the same clothes for a month long, and where are you going to go to the bathroom, and where's the next meal coming from, and what about water? And these people are obviously desperate for a better life. So my mind is, as soon as I saw that train, my mind went to how just the sheer uncomfortable aspect of it must seem like a huge thing to tackle, that you have to be desperate to try and do this because the hurdles are immense to do it.
Well, at the same time, they're leaving absolutely everything behind. Whatever kind of safety or security or familiarity they had with like family and work and Julio's school and his friends or whatever, and then to basically just disappear into the wilderness to make this trek.
Yeah,
with nobody knowing where they went or where they could be.
Yeah, and I'll just highlight also, the reason that people are able to make it is because of the community that's formed oftentimes on this journey. You hear a lot of talk about caravans and the caravans that are going to invade this country and this and that. But those caravans are a lot of what keep people safe because they have safety in numbers and are able to take care of each other to get resources like water, like food, like clothing. And in this, we don't really show it much, but obviously they only have a backpack and a bag each. These caravans are what allow people to take more things if they need to, and take care of each other and keep each other safe from everything else that might be going on there.
Now, I mentioned it earlier. Right? I'm assuming that Mercedes is a single mom. Is there anything more about Juan's father or the father in this story, or is he
Wasn't he
being
killed
kept out of the story?
Wasn't he killed
Yeah.
by a gang that wanted to recruit her son?
Yeah, so there will be more about the
Okay.
dad in a future issue. But yeah, essentially what we know in the first issue is that he's been murdered. And that essentially what tends to happen with a lot of these neighborhood gangs that are then associated with larger gangs that operate, throughout Central America, Mexico, and the U.S. Is that they'll then try to recruit your child, and a lot of these children are recruited as young as 6 years old, and a lot of these neighborhood gangs are led by teenagers, who have already been in it for 10 years or something at that point. So yeah, what we know at this point is that the father's been murdered, and they threaten to kill Juan as well if he doesn't join up. So that's why they fled, but we'll see more about what happened in those events in a future issue.
Okay.
And what was your reason for choosing their country of origin as being Guatemala, as opposed to any other southern American country?
Sure. I think so. For me, like I mentioned, my background is Cuban and Colombian, and those are two very different experiences from each other, and also different from the experience that a lot of people who are attempting to claim asylum at the border have now. But for me, I thought that Guatemala is a country that is very represented when it comes to people seeking asylum at the border. So I thought that if I wanted to present a story that was real to what was happening, I thought that that's what made the most sense for him to be a child from Guatemala.
Very cool. Very cool.
Spoil the last page.
Yeah, I'm trying not to. I was like, wait, that's that spot. So yeah.
Yeah, we spoil a lot of it in the solicits. We kind of had no way around not doing that. So, it's fine.
Well, I'm so pleased that, first of all, that I got copies. Now were there, as a variant collector, there were A and B covers?
Yeah, so there was a cover A from Lisa Sturl, who's a really incredible artist whose work I love. She has a book called Witch Blood right now from Vault. That's also a pretty hot book.
Yeah.
And then cover B is Jacoby Salcedo. He's an artist that he's the artist I work with the most. I mentioned the mini comics before. We've done 3 mini comics at this point together. One of them was the one in the COVID Chronicles anthology. And he's in the middle of illustrating a graphic novel that we have coming out through HarperCollins in a couple of years. It's called Frontera. So he's someone that, any project I do, I find a way to involve him somehow. And for this, it was doing variants for every issue. So there's a cover B for number 1, but there's also a cover B that he did for all 5 issues.
So there's going to be A and B for all 5 issues?
Mm-hmm.
And what about the second printing? Is there just one cover for that?
Just one, yeah. It's essentially, you might have seen it already. It's a recoloring, and it was a lot more than just coloring, but of the first issue, of the first cover that Lisa did. So it's a nighttime version of that that cover. Yeah.
Wait, I did have a question. Now you have a graphic novel planned. You've done comics. Is your background as a writer? How you don't tell me what you do for a living specifically, but are you a writer, or is this a pastime, hobby that has all of a sudden become your main focus?
This has been my main focus for the last couple of years. Even though at this point I still have, I still work a day job.
Okay.
This has been like, if you want to talk about like the percentage of brain, like what I dedicate to this, it's definitely been my focus. But prior to this, I grew up in music and kind of like the punk and hardcore scene in South Florida. So I was writing for zines and like online websites and blogs. So that's my writing background.
Okay.
But you know, my day job is an administrative kind of thing. But you know, to your, like you said, I have a graphic novel coming out in 2023. These it's for HarperCollins, so it's the book market. It takes so much longer than the direct market and a publisher like Image. But I believe next week we're announcing another book that I have coming out, another graphic novel. So this is, you know, comics kind of like you plan into the future. So like what you're seeing now is not everything. So, you know, very soon this will be my full-time thing. But yeah, but Home was my first published book.
And so you've already got something set up with HarperCollins. That's a pretty big deal, I would think.
Yeah, we got you know, kind of what I mentioned earlier about like the research and like the obsessiveness with like trying to figure out how to put a comic out. You know, Jacoby and I, we were going to do Frontera as a web series, as a web comic. And then we found an agent that pitched it to different publishers. And we landed at Harper Alley, which is the YA, the young adult imprint that HarperCollins has. And I wrote that book last year. And now he's been illustrating it. So he'll be done illustrating it next year. And then it'll be out the following year. But, you know, luckily we've been very lucky to kind of meet the right people to help us get these books with publishers and, you know, find an audience for them.
It sounds like you've pounded a lot of pavement, though, too, which reminds me of when we talked to Frank Gogol about his comics, that he's had to pound a lot of pavement to get people interested, and once they're interested, to get the book out to the public. So yeah. It's not as simple as just sending something in. You've really had to really work hard to get someone interested and really pound the pavement to get your work out there. It's not an easy thing to do, it sounds like. Yeah.
I mean, I'll give a shout out to Frank right now. He's been a super helpful resource to me. And I met him through the group. I saw him posting about his anthology Grief a couple years ago, I think. And I reached out to him, and you know, he was super open to answering my questions. And, you know, I think Frank would agree with this. Like most things, comics is not a meritocracy. You know, it's not a situation where, you know, if you're the best writer, you will be published. If you're the best artist, you'll be published. I would say that 50% or even more of this is that hustle, you know, and, you know, pounding the pavement and, you know, finding people on social media, stalking them to an extent, you know, to, you know, figure out if they'll be interested in what you're doing and figuring out how to contact them, you know, and then also like
that hustle.
No, like it's still going right now, you know, like I might have books set up at other publishers, but, you know, I'm still trying to find out what somebody's email is at certain publishers, you know, and what the best way might be to reach out to them. And, you know, it's also keeping an ear out for what's going on in the comic creating community. You know, that's how we found our agent. It was, you know, there's this event called DV Pit, and it's hashtag Pitch Wars, and it happens I think a couple times a year. And essentially it's for agents to find new clients. Mm-hmm. And you tweet out a pitch with certain hashtags to say like what genre, what age groups. And that's what we did with Frontera. And that's how we found our agent. She was one of a few agents that saw that tweet and reached out to us. So it's a lot of also like ingraining yourself in that creator community and knowing when things are going to happen, you know, when there's going to be like social events that allow you to promote your work and put it in front of people that may not have seen it before.
So you not only have to have a huge passion for what you want, you've got to have dedication and your ducks in a row to follow through. I mean, the passion gets the book written, but then there's the dedication to getting this thing anything published, you've got to be organized and follow a plan and really see it through.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I would say, I think we can pretty confidently say that, there's probably the greatest comic book writer out there that has never been published, and because it does take more than just, I'm not the best writer, like I feel pretty confident about my skills, but I know that part of getting this book published wasn't just because I'm, some incredible writer that nobody's ever seen. It was, putting in the work beforehand. And that's what I encourage, everybody else to do if they want to write a book, start off small with short stories, put them out there for free, spend money paying artists to collaborate with you and make these books with you, and then put it out there for free. Let people catch on to it. And then, work on whatever your big thing is and try to pitch it. I also really recommend Alex Segura. He's a great writer. He has he's the co-president of Archie, and he has some Comixology original books. He has a class on how to pitch, an online class on how to pitch comics, on Lit Reactor. And I credit him, his class with helping me develop a pitch that was professional enough for Image to look at. And, because part of the battle is getting your work in front of the right people, but getting them in front of the right people isn't the whole thing. You have to have something that they see to be at least at the quality that of the other books that they're putting out. So that class really helped me put together a pitch that was professional and that would tell Image everything that they might want to know about this book to make a decision on it. So I highly recommend that class also if anybody is interested in pitching books.
That's interesting, because I was always under the impression that as like an indie comic book writer or like an offshoot, startup on your own, that you're basically out there by yourself. I didn't know that there was so many like groups and seminars and things like that are kind of help you along your way. It always felt to me like it was kind of a closed door. Like once somebody gets in through a certain door, that doorway is shut, and you have to figure out a new doorway to get into comics.
Yeah, I mean, that might be the case with certain creators. It's definitely the case with certain creators. But there's a lot of creators that have been open to answering questions for me. I mentioned Frank earlier. But even bigger creators, that have been, I mentioned Ed Brisson earlier, that have been willing to just answer questions, open the door for you. And I think that's the way to go about it, but it does take a lot of work, and just like going on Twitter and, replying to people and making friends and, it's a lot of work, but, it pays off if, it might pay off. Like I said, it's not a meritocracy, but it takes a lot of work.
Yeah, and the hustle never stops. Once you get in, you still, it's not over. Your job's not done. Like here you are, issue 1 has already came out, and here you are on our show, still trying to promote it, still trying to get it out there, still trying to make that word be heard.
Well, in fairness to Julio, he was supposed to be on last Sunday, and I messed up before it came out, so that's my fault.
No worries. But yeah, it's a lot of coming on shows like this. Luckily with you guys, I had that connection from the Facebook group.
Good.
But, just talking about the book and trying to get people interested in it.
Okay. So with that said, with your connection to the group and with, you already mentioned how you're an Omnibus collector, and I see some stuff in your background. That sleeper Omnibus it really stuck out.
Where do you see that? I don't see it.
Yeah, if he moves his head a little bit, they got Sleeper back there. He's got all the Ed Brubaker stuff back there, all the criminal.
That's my Brubaker Phillips shelf.
Oh, okay, I see it.
Yeah, I know we're here, and we want to try and push the single issues as much as possible, but we know what it's all about on this show. What's your plans for the next step? Like, is there a trade paperback? Are you thinking about a hardcover? Are you thinking about like a library edition? With you being a part of the edition? Yeah, with you being a part of of this kind of niche community, like what do you have in mind next for the publication of Home?
Yeah, can you have
Yeah,
one of
I mean,
his own dog named Omnidog?
Yeah, can we get a quote? Can we send you quotes to put on the book? That'd
an
be great.
endorsement, the first the first OmniBros endorsement on a hardcover.
Yeah,
Oh, that would be so great.
yeah.
But yeah, as a collector of Omnibus, as Omar says, I I would love to have a hardcover edition. Right now, the plan is in October. There's going to be a trade that Image is going to be putting out of these 5 issues. I'll say this because I've said it in other places too. This is definitely a miniseries with a beginning and an end. But I do have, if it is successful throughout its run, I do hope to do more of this story. So the hope is that I am able to do enough to fill a hardcover. Hopefully get another arc or 2 of the book. But if not, the 5 issues tells an entire story, and I'll be grateful that we got those 5 issues. But yeah, definitely a trade coming up in October. I think it's on Amazon already, actually.
Oh wow!
Oh,
Yeah, Image is kind of on that really early. But then hopefully in the future we can do a hardcover of more issues if they come.
there are already people in the chat asking me to buy the trade, so you get hard.
Yeah, that's how it works, right?
We definitely need Julio back. We're gonna need you back in as the hardcover or as the trade paperback's getting released, so we can kind of get some more eyes on that.
For sure.
Have you on like a Monday show for the previews edition or something? That'd be great.
Yeah, definitely. No, I'd love to.
What to get more of the story? What will it be based on? Sales of the trade or general interest, or what would get you to write a couple more arcs of the story?
So I'm personally I'm ready to do more today. It's more for Image to essentially like green light more.
Okay.
I would say single issues is really where that happens. Because trade, single issues is obviously the price point is much lower, but the volume of issues that they sell is much, much greater than the volume of trades. People like Brubaker and Phillips are doing a really interesting experiment right now with Reckless and going essentially straight to trade with that higher price point, knowing that the volume might be lower, but ultimately maybe making more with the higher price point. But I would say single issues is what will determine whether or not we get to make more issues. The trade obviously encourages that even more. I'm not going to tell people to not wait, to buy the single issues and double dip with the trade. I know this community is all about double dipping with different editions, but I know for me, like I'm not buying single issues and then the trade personally. I'm usually doing single issues and then maybe the hardcover later on. But yeah, the single issues is probably what's going to determine whether we get to do more.
All right. So I hope everybody goes out there and gets that first print. If they could find it at their local LCS or grab that second print. When's the second print coming out?
Yeah, so second print is May 12th, which is the Wednesday before issue 2 comes out. So that means that FOC for the reprint is Monday. And FOC for issue 2 is the following Monday. So tell your store.
Sorry, go ahead. No, finish what you're saying.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, so if you want the second printing, please let your stores know. I know already just anecdotally from hearing from stores that they'll be ordering pretty deep. But, if you want to make sure you get a copy, because I know that a lot of stores sold out pretty quickly, and obviously Diamond did as well, but definitely let your store know before, I guess, between now and tomorrow to pre-order a copy and guarantee it.
I would think that Image must be pretty pleased that you sold out of the first issue. That's got to mean something to them.
Yeah, we had our print run was not of Department of Truth levels or anything like that, but our print run was larger than most young creators' first book. So I think they are pretty happy. I mean, from what they've told me, I know that they're happy.
That's good.
Especially that it sold out within hours that first day. So I feel pretty confident about the future of this book. But if you want to make sure you get a copy, definitely let your store know.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a great book. I'm going to go find a couple copies myself because I'm going to have to hand it out to family members and friends who have been affected by this treatment at the border. I have a brother-in-law who's an immigration attorney, and I think this is the kind of thing that'd be just right up his alley and just right up, with his lifestyle and what his job is about. So this is going to be a fun experiment. It's going to be a fun idea too. So.
Does he read comics at all?
A little bit. I recommend him books all the time. He's a big nerd himself. So
okay, good.
He'll be into it, especially with something of this kind of topic. He'll be into it for sure. So,
wow. That'd be a good first book for somebody to read if they wanted to find out about this topic and the superhero element in it. This could be a good gateway for somebody into comics.
I've already heard from people people that I know, my friends that don't read comics. This has been their first one, and they've asked me for recommendations on other books now too. So
it's such a great representation of the Hispanic kind of lifestyle in the community and what it takes for that family to kind of make it over. And with there being, we're such a large part of this country, and there's a lot of, and like you said before, we consume so much of this pulp culture and this entertainment. That seeing this, which is probably a lot of people's origin stories, to be honest, or at least like their parents' origin story, depending on if you're a first generation American or not, and to see that represented in this manner, in such a positive yet truthful and scary and hurtful event, that it's going to be something that somebody can hold on to and feel a part of that story already.
Yeah, that's the hope.
He said hope, and I said hope.
Yeah.
There is hope.
Yeah, we're there for it. I mean, I would love to see more Hispanic stories in comics as well. So hopefully this is that kind of breakthrough with it being such a sellout. So that you see that there is an audience for that kind of material.
Yeah, definitely. And look, not just to tell you guys to buy my book, but we need to show publishers like Image that there is this audience for this book. My friend Henry Barajas, he has a book called Helm Grey Castle that comes out, I think, 2 Wednesdays from now. It's a Latinx fantasy book, and it's really great. I read the first issue already, so definitely pick that up as well. It's from Image and Top Cow. So definitely pick that up. There's also La Mano del Destino. It's a luchador book. That's also coming out from Image and Top Cow next month. It's a graphic novel that I recommend everybody pick up as well. And, like I said, not just picking up my books, but, showing these publishers that there is a market for these Latino stories.
Excellent. Very cool. What was the name of those books again? I'm gonna jot it down.
I think I pre-ordered that first one.
Helm Grey Castle is the first one. That one comes out the 29th, which I think is not this Wednesday, next Wednesday. And that's going to be a 4-issue mini, I believe. And the other one is La Mano del Destino. And that's an OGN, also from Image and Top Cow. And that's out May 19th, because it's the same day as Home #2.
Oh, that Helm Grey Castle looks great. It was a Kickstarter, apparently, huh? So
yeah. So he kickstarted it, and now they're putting it out.
That's awesome. It looks great.
I got it.
Yeah, it's really cool.
I got a Things from Another World variant cover of it pre-ordered.
Nice.
So I'm definitely going to be looking at it.
Oh, and we share the same colorist, Brian Valenza. He colors Helm Grey Castle also.
And did you find him online also?
I found him. I think off the top of my head, I think it was a recommendation from somebody else. And I had seen his work, and I thought it worked really well. Anna has a very stylized, almost cartoonish style in some moments, and I thought that his colors would be a good contrast to that and add some realism to it. And I think they did a really good job kind of playing off of each other.
Yeah, I had no idea how much social media played a role in your story, in getting the book made.
Yeah.
So I found that part really interesting. It sounds like it was a lot.
Yeah, definitely wouldn't exist without,
Mhm.
the people that I met on social media, getting advice from creators and, using that as a tool to figure out who to reach out to and how to do it and everything.
Let me see real quick. I'm gonna show that Helmgrave Castle because it looks really cool.
Yeah, I'll say that like I'm not somebody who's into fantasy very often. Game of Thrones is really like it for me when it comes to fantasy. But this was really, really cool. As somebody who isn't into it, I really liked it a lot.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah, this looks fun.
That does look really fun.
Yeah, I'm in on that. I'll check that out for sure. That looks like it's gonna be a fun read. So.
Yeah, I read the first issue. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it comes out the 28th. So check that out. Support your Hispanic Latino artists in comic books. This is gonna be great. We need more of it. Like we've been saying, we need more of it.
There's a word in there that gets discussed by the OmniBros all the time. The OmniBros that aren't me, and that is, how do you even say it? Latinx?
Latinx, yeah.
How do you feel about that word? Because everybody argues about it that is actually Hispanic in the OmniBros chat, which is everybody but me.
Yeah, so Latinx is a word that so for those of you who aren't Spanish speakers, Spanish is a very gendered language. Everything is with an O is male, A ending with A is female. And that even extends to like inanimate objects. Some of them are with an O, some of them are with an A. It doesn't always kind of, make sense. But essentially the term Latinx was started, I believe in Brazil, by people who are gender nonconforming as a more inclusive way to use the word Latino or Latina. Because they didn't feel like Latino or Latina represented them. And it's also, for me, it's been a word that makes it easier to just talk about a group of people in our culture as a whole without referring to Latinos and, missing out on women that are in that or gender nonconforming people. So for me, I'm all for it. It isn't something that that I feel offended by if somebody doesn't refer to me as Latinx or does refer to me as Latinx. I think most of the people who complain about it, their complaint is about, all the snowflakes who can't, they need to be called this, but, they're getting just as upset about it too. So, for me, I like to use language that affirms people as much as I can. So if that's language that affirms somebody, then I'm happy to use it,
Oh, that is so great to hear, because I am so going to use that as an argument against Omar the next time we're in the chat together.
Oh, man, awesome. I'd love to talk to Omar about that.
He has definite feelings about it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I mean, yeah.
I'm going to definitely use it. Probably not the way you want, but as a basis for an argument. But I have to have a comeback for Omar all the time.
Yeah.
So is there anything we haven't covered? I think we've extensively talked about all your experiences, which I think this interview has been great.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah, no, thanks for having the thoughtful questions. I tell people, follow me on social media if you're interested in, staying up to date on anything that I'm putting out. It's just my name. It's @Julio Anta on Twitter, Instagram. I also mentioned that I have some free mini comics on my website. I have 5 comics with different artists on my website. It's julioanta.com. And they're all 4 to 10 pages long. If you want an example of how I started off in comics, that's how I did it. With just really short, contained stories that get in and get out quick. And that try to have a perspective about something. So yeah, I direct people there too.
Well, of course I'll be getting those, so you can put those out in a hardback eventually.
Yeah.
As everybody does.
It's all up to Jess and his buying habits. So.
Yeah. Well, you can call yourself an influencer, right?
Apparently, I drive the market. I don't know how that
Yeah.
works out, but I do.
Yeah.
Well, this has been great. I have just found this fascinating. Your work's fascinating. The way you went about getting it published, I thought was great, and I couldn't ask more from an interviewee. I mean, you were just a great interview. So thank you so
Jess.
much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Anytime, guys. I'm definitely happy to come on again when the trade's coming out or whenever. I'm a fan of the show, fan of the group. So anytime.
Yeah, I'm in for it, man. The more Hispanic kind of representation we have in the comics community and trade paperback area, and or whatever it is, really is something that is going to be special for all of us here. So we'll love to have you back on, and hopefully we get you to get some more stories out there. Hopefully past home, we get more home, return to home 2, whatever it might be, or even just something out the ordinary. Maybe we'll see some superhero stuff from you too.
Yeah, got a lot planned. So hopefully we'll be able to talk about some stuff soon.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
No, of course, my pleasure.
All right, Jess. So it looks like we've been out here for about an hour and 20 minutes. What an amazing show. Awesome to have such a great writer on this show representing Hispanic culture, touching on these kind of current events. And again, like I said, grounding it and keeping it, superhero-y, but keeping it grounded as well. So that was awesome. Jess, let's go ahead and get that last sponsor spot going, and let's keep moving on with the show.
When the trade comes out, you'll be able to get it at instocktrades.com, where you can get your collected editions up to 50% off. Loyalty discounts add 2% to that. There's always a $50 gift card given away by us at the end of every month that is supplied by instocktrades.com. $50 or more in an order gets you free shipping in the United States. Fabulous customer service, fabulous packaging. That's instocktrades.com. Right on.
I can't wait to have him back when that trade paperback starts getting solicited. So
I'm excited for his graphic novel too, and everything else that he has planned. I'm eagerly looking forward to the rest of this series.
Yeah, Home was a good read. I don't want to say it was a quick read. I don't mean that like in a negative way, but it just the flow. Like there was really nothing that kind of took you out of the story that made me have to kind of go like, what happened? And have to kind of like go back and re-question and kind of revisit, a past part in the story. So he's a really good comic book writer. Like he's able to flow that through with Anna and everything. So
yeah, I agree.
All right, Jess. So where can everybody find you at?
On YouTube, you can find me at OmniDogs Vault, and on Instagram, you can find me at OmniDogs_Vault.
And everybody, you can find me, Gabe Loves 90s Comics, on YouTube and on Instagram.
Peace and love. Peace and love. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. Thank you.